Good morning, my lovelies. Welcome to your descriptive writing lesson for this week. Today we're going to give some feedback on your Zoom in paragraphs that you wrote before half term. So can you please make sure that you have those Zoom in paragraphs from the 5th of February in front of you, ready for your feedback? If you don't have those Zoom in paragraphs, you can't find them, or you didn't complete that lesson, send me an email and I will send you a copy for you to work on today. Pause the video and make sure you have a Zoom in paragraph in front of you for your feedback lesson now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you have your Zoom in paragraphs ready in front of you. And now I would like you to copy down the title, the date, and the learning objective. Pause the video and press play when you have those three things written down, please. Okay, now it's time to complete your do now. We're going to work on our spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So you need to copy these 5 sentences and correct the spelling, punctuation, and grammar errors in each of them. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. Please make sure that you make any corrections in purple pen if you need to. It's very important that your do nows are accurate. So if you flick back through your book to look for examples or to remind yourself of something, they need to be correct so you don't retain any incorrect information. So number 1 and number 4 were examples of comma splices, where commas are used to join 2 independent clauses. To fix that, we can use a semicolon, a full stop, or a conjunction. Number 2 is a complex sentence, which we're going to look at later, and each part of the sentence is separated by a comma. Number 3, who was frail and ice is an example of a parenthesis, and that can be set off by using commas, dashes, and brackets. The idea is that the phrase in those punctuation marks can be removed and the sentence still makes sense on its own. Number 5 is a fronted adverbial, and therefore it needs a comma just after. And I've just realised that I've put the brackets in the wrong place here. Hold on. It should have been there. Ice cold. Sorry about that. Pause the video and make any corrections that you need to now, please. Okay, let's have a look at our what went well. So I was really impressed of your ability to use the structure for this paragraph. It was clear that a lot of you had the Zoom in checklist in front of you and you were using that whilst you were writing. This is the checklist that we use. We always begin by describing the character's position near the zoom in, which is one of the main items in the scene. We describe 3 features of that zoom in detail. We use 3 fronted adverbials, 3 colour vocabularies. We use this sentence here to add detail. And then the final sentence is going to introduce our character by describing their reaction to the zoom in. And that's going to lead us on nicely to our character paragraph. So let's look at this example here. Your task is to go to your paragraphs and label in purple pen each of these steps. I'm going to show you how that looks using this response. So let's read it. Standing in front of him, his chocolate brown eyes were reading help in them. Meanwhile, his wrinkles stood all across his face. After a while, I realizing that not a single follicle of his beard was not ash grey. Standing next to him, it seemed like he was dying with desperation for help. His pale white face had been overtaken by a jet black dusty colour. Shocked, the girl stood, not knowing how this could have happened. So there's a couple of punctuation errors in there and some grammar errors, but that's not our focus. Our focus is to figure out whether this student has hit all of the features of the checklist. So let's label. I've got my purple pen. Start describing the character's position near the zoom in. We've done that here, especially with the phrase standing in front of him. So we're going to write character's position. I'm just going to tick that off. 3 features. We've got the wrinkles, we've got the follicle, and I guess we've got his white face. There. 3 features. 3 fronted adverbials. We have after a while. We have shocked. And we have meanwhile. So meanwhile, where's after a while? You can always highlight these as well if it's easier for you. Shocked. Fronted adverbials, and so on and so forth. You would do the same and label with the rest of the checklist. Also, it's important to recognise if there is anything that you have missed in your paragraphs that needs to be written in purple pen at the end of your paragraph in capital letters. So, for example, if you've missed your colour vocabulary, at the end, maybe here you would want to write colour vocab in capital letters so you know what you have missed. So pause the video now, label the checklist. You can rewind so you've got the checklist in front of you, and then add anything in purple pen that you are missing in capital letters. Pause the video and complete this task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you should have labelled each of your zoom in paragraphs in purple pen to see what items of the checklist you've included, and then you should have added at the end in capital letters any items that you have missed. Also, another WWW was the good use of literary devices to enhance your writing. I saw lots of similes, metaphors, and personifications. So, what I would like you to do now is go to your paragraph and grab your highlighter and highlight where you've used similes, personifications, and metaphors. So, let's look at this example from earlier. And I'm going to grab my highlighter. And I'm going to have a read of it again. His eyes were reading, helping them. Meanwhile, his wrinkles stood all across his face. His wrinkles stood all across his face is an example of personification. Standing next to him seemed like he was dying with desperation for help. His pale white face had been overtaken by a jet black dusty colour. Again, you have the overtaken there. And that's what I've highlighted in that paragraph there. So now it's your turn. Go through each of your paragraphs, highlight where you've used similes, personification, and metaphors. Pause the video and press play when you've completed that task. Okay, if you're back, that means you should have highlighted wherever you've used any of the literary devices on screen. Now, we can focus on our improvements. How can we get better? So, one of the main EBIs is to include a variety of sentence structures. We have looked at this if I taught you in Year 7, but it's important that we recap. So, these are the sentence types that we have. We have a simple sentence, which is a single independent clause, meaning that it makes sense on its own. We also have a compound sentence, which is 2 independent clauses, and they are joined together with a conjunction normally. And then we have a complex sentence, where there is an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So again, the independent clause, meaning it makes sense on its own, and then you have dependent clauses attached to that. On the screen now, I'm going to show you some example sentences. As the boy munched their greasy pizza, they realised how delectable it was, which means tasty. The disobedient teen sauntered towards the park. The silk blanket was luxurious and the velvet cushion was splendid. Your task is to match these example sentences to the correct sentence type. So what you need to do is you need to copy down the 3 sentence types, and I'd also recommend you copy down the definition so you always have a reminder. And then next to them or underneath them, you want to match the sentences to the correct sentence type. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you've completed this task and you've matched them up. Now it's time to make our correction. So grab your purple pen and let's get correcting. So the first one, as the boy munched their greasy pizza, they realised how delectable it was. I know that that is a complex sentence because there is a main clause and an independent clause. Number 2, the disobedient teen sauntered towards the park. That's a simple sentence. There's no punctuation or conjunction there. And then that means this one is a compound sentence, and the word "and" gives that away. And also the fact that the silk blanket was luxurious, the velvet cushion was splendid, are both sentences that make sense on their own. Pause the video and make any corrections here that you need to, please. So, just to clarify a little bit further about complex sentences, where there is an independent clause and one or more dependent clause, this is what I mean by that. So we have an independent clause and we have a dependent clause, one or more. So independent clauses are easier to identify because they always make sense on their own. So as the boys munch their greasy pizza, that doesn't make sense on its own because you're waiting for additional information after that, which means that this is the independent clause. And the second example, they realised how delectable their greasy pizza was as they munched it. So it would be, they realised how delectable their greasy pizza was, which means the dependent clauses are the other sections of the sentence. As the boy munched their greasy pizza doesn't make sense on its own, and as they munched it also doesn't make sense on its own. Those green clauses, the dependent clauses, need to be attached to the yellow clauses, the independent clauses, to make sense. So let's have a look at some examples of students who have included a variety of sentence structures. So this student here, the mould off the apple was peeling off and the blackness was fading into the inside of the apple. The ruby red colour had faded and the jet black had taken over. The core was soft and flimsy and the sides were mushy and sloppy. The orange was slowly coming away but was still visible. The mushiness had created holes and dents and air bubbles. As you can see here, the student has used quite a few compound sentences. One complex sentence here, the orange was slowly coming away but was still visible. But there are no simple sentences. And also, every single sentence starts with the, and the. So now we're going to improve the structure of one sentence in each paragraph in Purple Pen. So you have your 3 zoom in paragraphs. We're going to take one sentence and we're going to improve the structure of that sentence in Purple Pen. So I'm going to do it for this example. I'm going to grab my Purple Pen. And I'm going to change. I'm going to look at this one here. This is the one that I'm choosing. Doesn't matter which one, but I want to choose this one because we've got quite a few compound sentences that start with the, and I want to switch it up a little bit. So this sentence says the core was soft and flimsy and the sides were mushy and sloppy. I'm going to make this a complex sentence. So I'm going to write similar to the soft and flimsy core, the sides, and I think this is talking about the apple, so I'm just going to write the apple to be clear. The sides of the apple were mushy and sloppy, full stop. So I have created a complex sentence there. This is my dependent clause, similar to the soft and flimsy core. It doesn't make sense on its own because the word similar indicates that I need to compare it to something. But because it's attached to this independent clause, the sides of the apple were mushy and sloppy, that makes a complete sentence. As you can see, I haven't changed the content of the sentence. I'm still describing the same thing, but I've changed the sentence structure and also changed the start of that sentence to make it more interesting. Now it's your turn. I would like you to go through each of your paragraphs, consider the type of sentences that you have in your paragraphs, and then choose one to improve in Purple Pen. You can do that either around your zoom out paragraph, or if you haven't got much room, you can do it underneath today's date and title. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you are ready to move on. And now we're going to look at our other EBI, which is including parentheses to add additional information. So let's have a look at these two pieces here. Grandchild stood next to his grandfather, who was 80, and stared carefully at his broad white beard. The individual hairs were pointing in every direction, long or short. His eyebrows were pebble grey and old. The minuscule hairs added up upon his beard, which made it full and complete. Standing next to him, he seemed tall and vast. The child was engulfed in his vastness. We also have this one. As the continual rain kept pouring down, the flower shivered intensely as the water drops hit the petal harshly. Some of the drops rolled down, while some others grasped onto the felty indigo petals. It's a lovely personification there. It settled in all different sizes, and when one or more drops touched the slightest, they would merge and swivel down. The transparent drops reflected the purple and made it camouflage within the petals, but gave it an effect that glistened in the distance. The rain was like diamonds falling onto the flower. Both of these examples are really great zoom-in paragraphs, very advanced ideas, very specific details and descriptions. But they could include parentheses. This one includes a parentheses, who was 80. It could even include another parentheses. This one doesn't include any parentheses. So I'm going to add a parentheses into this paragraph in Purple Pen. I included a top example to show you that parentheses is used and can be used. Also that it can also be used even further. So let's have a look at this bottom example here. Some of the drops rolled down while some others grasped onto the felty indigo pebbles. It settled in all different sizes, and when one or more drops at the slightest, the transparent drops reflected the purple, made it camouflage within the petals, but gave it an effect that glistened in the distance. The rain was like diamonds falling onto the flower. I'm going to add a parentheses. Some of the drops rolled down. I'm going to add a parentheses here. And I'm going to add brackets, and I'm going to write some of the drops rolled down. I'm going to write slowly and carefully, while some others grasped into the felt indigo petals. So by adding that parentheses, I've added some additional information about how the water drops rolled down, and I've also added some different punctuation in the brackets. Now it's your turn. I would like you to go through each of your paragraphs and add in parentheses in Purple Pen. You can add additional information, or you can change some of the punctuation that you already have to add brackets or dashes. Pause the video and add parentheses in each of your paragraphs in Purple Pen now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you've completed this task and you are ready to submit your work. Pause the video here for a reminder of how I would like you to submit your work. Once you've submitted your work to my email, you can X out the video and move on with your day. I look forward to seeing all of your excellent feedback and Purple Pen corrections in my email inbox later today. Well done.